So, chapter 3 is what we're going to be talking about now. What is chapter 3? We're going to be talking about cost, volume, profit analysis. All right, so we're going to be explaining the features, determine the break-even point. We're going to understand how income tax affects it, explain how managers use the analysis, explain how sensitivity analysis help managers cope, use CVP analysis to plan variable and fixed costs, apply the analysis to the company producing multiple products, apply the analysis in service or non-for-profit, and distinguish between contribution margin from gross margin, okay? So, let's go back to this from the current slides. So, what is CVP, cost volume analysis, and how does it work? So, make sure I'm on the page here. Managers want to know how profits will change as units sold in production or services changes. So basically what we're going to be doing is, you know how you have a budget and things change, right? So what the cost volume analysis does is kind of like what we did in that one problem where we started off with 150 and then we looked at it, what happens when it becomes 150, or we started off with 125, then we looked at it to see what happens at 150. Okay, so what we're doing is we're going to be looking at costs and adjusting our numbers based on the number of units that we produce. They like to use the what-if analysis to examine the possible outcomes of different decisions so they can make the best one. And we talked in chapter 2, total revenues, total cost, and income. We'll take a look at the relationships among the elements. So in that one problem, we looked at, you know, the total cost and then the variable cost plus fixed cost. We're going to be doing more of that in this chapter, okay? Now, we talked about before the 5 steps to decision making. The first one is to identify the problem and uncertainty. That was one of your homework assignments in chapter 1, right? Where we had a scenario, we had to determine which, step they fell in. Then we have step 2, obtain information. So like at the end of the pot pie, we decided the first one was something similar to, okay, we're going to decide maybe we should start making the pot pie, right? Attain information would be what? Gathering cost information, doing research, customer test kitchens, things like that. That would be obtaining information. Is this something that we might want to do? Is there a demand out there? And if so, how much is it going to cost us to produce this item? Make predictions about the future. So we're going to take, okay, we think that in this region, we're going to be able to sell 100,000 pot pies, but in this region over here, maybe only 20,000. And why? It might be location in the South. People in the South might not want pot pies, because I think pot pie is more of a cold food, don't you? So that's something like that. Make decisions by choosing between the alternatives. So in that pot pie is we decided to actually start making it. We said, yes, it's a good product, and yes, we want to make it. We're also going to be later on in this semester talking about should we make the product or stop the product. That's another way of looking things. We make a product now. Should we keep making it or should we discontinue it? Or the product mix. We're going to be talking about product mix later on in this semester. What is the best product mix? Should I make 100 of item A and 50 of item B or vice versa? Okay? So we make the decision and then implement the decision, evaluate performance, and learn. Once you implement a decision, so we made the pot pies, that's not the end of it. Why? Why would that not be the end of it? I'm making the pot pies. Huh?
Because you might not sell them.
You might not sell them, okay? So you have to analyze what's going on. Is your cost meeting your expectations? Are your sales meeting your expectations? If not, why? You might have thought region 1 was a great region to sell it, and region 2 was not so great, but it might be, vice versa once you get into making the pot pies and selling them. Okay? So you always have to be looking back at your decisions, and you might end up changing your decisions after that point, okay? Nothing stays the same, right? Okay. Now, some of the things when we're doing a cost volume profit analysis, we are making a few assumptions. You always have to make assumptions whenever you're doing these type of analysis. Changes in production sales volume are the sole cause for cost and revenue changes. Is that true in all cases? The only thing that makes my volume change is the cost and revenue changes are the sole cost of my production. No. What else could change to cause prices to change? Well, no, that's still internal. Okay? Right now we're thinking, okay, this is all internal. All right? Kind of like cost and revenue changes. So say what you're talking about, you're talking about in our analysis, we do not take into consideration the environment outside our company. Meaning, okay, so I have a new car. And so my gas is going to go up with this new car. I didn't take in, I did my budget this month, for my gas budget. And I based it on my old car. And now I got a new car. So now I have to make adjustments. We're assuming everything is going to stay the same. Okay. Okay? But things happen outside your control. I mean, well, yeah, the car. Actually, I came home Monday night and found my Mustang sitting in my driveway. Ooh. Yeah. It's pretty. All right. Total cost consists of fixed costs and variable cost. Okay, so we're assuming that both fixed costs and variable costs are included. Revenue and cost behave and can be graphed in a linear or straight line. We're thinking cause and effect is exactly the same no matter what. But how does life go? It varies, right? So we're assuming in our analysis that if I make a certain production, it's going to go up a certain amount no matter what. Selling price, variable cost per unit, and fixed costs are all known and constant. So selling price, variable cost, and fixed costs are all known and constant. We're not taking into consideration maybe our price, our variable costs for engines go up or our tires go up because the cost of rubber has gone up. Okay? We don't take into consideration that. Or, we don't take into consideration that we might do a rush order. Rush orders are going to cost more expensive. They cost more. All right? In many cases, only a single product will be analyzed. If multiple products are studied, their relative sales proportions are known and constant. So right now, as I said earlier, in the future here, and later on in the semester, we're going to be talking about different products at the same time. And what we're doing now, we're just going to be concentrating on one product. So the manufacturer only makes one product, okay? And if they do make, multiple products, we know the exact market mix or, mix of products there is. And then the time value of money is ignored. So we don't even look at that. Okay? Now, contribution margin. It's a manipulation of the basic equations, yields an extremely important and powerful tool extensively used in cost accounting. So the contribution margin equals revenue minus variable expenses. Revenue minus variable expenses. And then the contribution margin per unit is going to be equals the unit selling price less unit variable cost price, or can be obtained by taking the contribution margin divided by the number of units sold. Okay? So contribution, we're going to be talking about above the line and below the line. In a contribution margin, everything above the line is contribution, and it's going to be your sales minus your variable cost. And everything else is going to be below the line. Okay?
Can you go back for a second? Thank you.
What did you say was above the line?
When you're doing a contribution margin analysis, it's your revenue and all your variable costs. And your fixed costs are below the line. All right. You can also calculate it as the contribution margin per unit multiplied by the number of units sold. Contribution margin percentage is the contribution margin per unit divided by the unit selling price, or the contribution margin divided by revenue. So you have several different ways to get to where you want to go. Okay? Any questions on that? Okay? So when you're looking at this, a couple of things we want to remember is selling price times the quantity of units sold equals your revenue. So you have your revenue minus your variable cost equals your contribution margin minus your fixed cost equals your operating income. And this is the line. When I say above the line, below the line, the contribution margin is above the line. So, your variable cost, unit cost times the quantity sold equals your variable cost. Your revenue minus your variable cost equals your contribution margin. Contribution margin minus your fixed cost equals your operating cost. So you should know how much you're selling things for. You should know your variable cost per unit. You can get your contribution margin. If you know how many units you sold. Your fixed costs are your fixed costs no matter what, right? All right. Does anybody know what the break-even point is? Without looking up here. Break-even. Has to do with fixed costs. So, you have your revenues minus your variable expenses, right? Minus your fixed cost equals your profit, right? Break even is when profit equals exactly 0. So how you figure that out? You take your revenue minus your variable cost minus your fixed cost and set it equal to 0 to get your break-even point. So to get the number of units, you're going to take your fixed cost divided by your contribution margin per unit. How did I get my contribution margin per unit? I took my revenue minus my variable expenses, which is the contribution margin for the whole thing, divided by the number of units gets your contribution margin per unit. And basically what that tells me is for every unit I make $1 after variable expenses. Okay? Every unit is contributing $1 to my fixed expenses. If I have $10 in fixed expenses, it takes me 10 units to get to my break even. I start making $1 per unit after the 10th unit. The other one to do for revenues, fixed cost divided by contribution margin percentage. Okay. So, quantity of units required to be sold, fixed cost plus your target operating income divided by the contribution margin per unit. So say I want to make an income of $10,000. So I would take the fixed cost I have, because remember, fixed costs are costs that I incur no matter what. Add what my target income is going to be, and divide it by my contribution margin per unit. So if I have a contribution margin of 1, and my fixed costs and my target operating income is 20, that means I need to sell 20 units to make $10. Okay, so let's look at an example here. I think that will help you understand this a little bit better. So Emma has a fixed cost of $2,000 and a contribution margin of 40%. Emma wants to make a profit of $2,000. What must her revenue equal? And what if wants to make a profit of $3,000? All right, so how do I set this up? I'm going to take my fixed cost. Where's my eraser? My fixed cost, so I have to cover my fixed cost first, plus the amount of income I want, divided by my contribution margin percentage of 0.4. So, I have 4,000 divided by 0.4, right? So I would have to have revenue equal $10,000 in order to make $2,000 profit. Okay, so let's take a look at this. So
How'd you get 40,000?
Yeah,
it's mathematics.
Did you converted the 0.4 to the 4? Okay.
And add a 0 to the 4,000. Okay? So, and you can of course use your calculator and it'll do the same thing. So, if you know what your fixed cost is, you know what your, what you want, then, and you know your contribution margin, and basically what's contribution margin? What, you know, how much of your revenue minus your variable expenses contributes to covering the fixed cost? So here it's 40% of what I sell, my revenues, will go to cover the fixed costs. Okay? So I have 2,000 plus 2,000 is 4,000 divided by 0.4 gives me 10,000. So I need, if I bring in $10,000 in revenue, I will make a profit of $2,000. Okay? If I want $3,000 in profit, that means I have covered all my variable costs and I covered all my fixed costs, and I take home, after those two costs are covered, I take home $3,000. I have to sell 12,500 to make it. To get my $3,000 in my pocket. Does everybody understand that? Okay? Yes, no, baby. All right. Now looking at graphically what happens here. This is my total revenue line. From 0 all the way up to $10,000. If I sell 50 units, I'm going to bring in $10,000. Now, this is my total cost line. What's total cost equal?
Variable and fixed.
Variable and fixed, all right? Well, then if you notice here, of course, this means that my fixed costs are $2,000. Plain and simple, no matter what, I have to pay out $2,000. Even if I make $1, I still got to pay out $2,000, all right? So anything in this area, I'm selling at a loss. That means the money I'm bringing in does not cover the variable cost per unit and my total fixed cost.
So you gotta sell 25 just to break even,
Yes.
and anything over that's profit.
Mm-hmm. So basically what that means is until I sell 25, I'm operating at a net loss. The minute I sell unit number 26, I'm making a profit and I'm a happy camper. Okay? And how much profit did I make with unit 26? It's the contribution margin. The contribution margin is your profit per unit after the break-even unit costs. Break-even unit. So if my contribution margin is $5, that means my profit is $5 at unit number 26. Unit number 27, my total profit is $10. Okay. Yes. Now, one thing that this does not take in consideration is the wonderful thing that we all have to pay, which is taxes. Okay? So when we're talking about the contribution margin, we're not taking in consideration taxes whatsoever. So, your operating income is before tax. And so now we have taxes, and that will equal your net income. Okay? So here we have operating income equals net income divided by 1 minus the tax rate. So if your rate is 25%, your 1 minus the tax rate would be 75%. So basically you're keeping 75 cents of every dollar as your net income. Does everybody understand that? So every dollar you make, 25% goes to the government. Now, in the CVP analysis, we're going to be using the operating income. And there might be a couple of questions talking about, what's the tax rate, what is the net income, where you'll have to figure this out, but other than that. Okay. So, in this example, this is why I tell ya Excel is your friend, and please use formulas in Excel. It will help you do these problems easier, okay? So, in this analysis, what we're doing is we're trying to, one, find out what the break-even point is, and then two, find out if I want a profit of certain amounts, how many units do I have to sell? And then, of course, my different fixed costs, and how do they affect my break-even point? How do they affect how many units I have to sell to get a certain amount, okay? And then how my variable cost changes, and how does it affect it? Now, here, what we have is, we have fixed cost, variable cost per unit equals, I want that equal to my break-even. Now, number of units required to be sold at $200. So in this case, my fixed costs are, I'm sorry, my income is $200 per unit. Okay? So, how do I get this so you guys understand the calculations behind this? Where is it? Does anybody see my marker?
When I was coming through the hall, I seen one, a blue one up
I
on
just
that.
had it in my, oh, it's in my pocket.
You had to pick it up.
All right, so revenues times the number of units minus your variable cost times the number of units minus fixed cost equals profit. Okay?
And RX is what?
Revenue. R equals revenue.
Okay.
Per unit. Okay? X equals number of units. V equals variable cost per unit. Okay? F equals fixed cost. Okay, and then profit. Or say P equals profit. Okay? Now, it says I'm going to sell this at 200. So I have 200x. So I know I'm going to bring in, for every unit I bring in, I'm going to get 200. Or for every unit I sell, I get $200. In this first line, my variable cost per unit is 100. So I'm going to have 100x. My fixed costs are 2,000. And I want a profit of 0. Break even is a profit of 0. Okay? Does everybody see how I did that? Yes, no, maybe. So then it's just a simple algebra equation. You add like terms, so I have 300x plus 2,000 divide by 300. Now here's the key.
Now, if 200x minus 100x, shouldn't that be 100x?
Oh, 100. Yeah, hello. Hello, thank you. My brain is not working. Darn it. It makes things easier, doesn't it? So now, my break-even point is 20 units. So basically what that means is I have to sell 20 units and I will cover both my variable costs and my fixed costs. Okay? Does everybody understand that? Yes, no, maybe. Now, if that had come up to 20.1, you know, in normal mathematics, what does 20.1 become if I round? Yeah. But in our analysis, it always rounds up. Because 20.1 would break even, right? Well, you can't sell a partial unit. And so if I sell 20, I'm still below my fixed costs. So I have to sell 21 units. That's a key thing to remember. Don't think of normal rounding in this equations now. Anything we're dealing with, you always, especially units, you always want to round up. Because think of this, you can't sell a partial unit. If you go down, you don't make enough. You gotta always go up. Okay? So what does that tell me? My break-even point is $20 or 20 units. Yeah. The one way that you can figure out $1,200 is what? Instead of putting 0 here, what do I put if I want to make $1,200? I would put the 1,200, right? The other way is finding my contribution margin. What's my contribution margin? My revenues minus my variable expenses, right? So my contribution margin is 200 minus 100 equals 100, right? So what I want to do is, my profit, if I want a $1,200 profit, I take the profit divided by the contribution margin. That gives me the number of units above break even. So in this case, if I want a $1,200 profit, I divide it by my contribution margin of 100, that gives me 12 units. So the number of units I need for a profit of 1,200 is my break even plus those units equals 32. You can also do the fixed cost plus my target divided by my contribution margin per unit. That's another way of doing it. That's probably easier because then you don't have to add the 20 on the 12.
So what is the 20 plus 12? What is that again?
That's my break even plus my units for profit. The other way is just, instead of just profit, you take your fixed costs plus your target operating income divided by your contribution margin. So that would be 2,000 plus 1,200 divided by 100. And that will give you your 32. Okay? And that's why I say use Excel on this, because it will be very helpful for you. Okay? And use formulas in Excel. And if you struggle with that, let me know and we can go over that like next week. You know, I kind of was doing it up here, you know, and if you want more details on how to do that, let me know. Excel is your friend. It's a wonderful tool.
Yes, it is.
All right, sensitivity analysis. So we're going to be looking at this, basically what happens as you move up. You can look at, I want a profit of this much and these are my fixed costs, how do I get there? Okay? That's really what we're doing. We can also do the what ifs. And what I mean by what ifs is, okay, like I do this with my eBay business all the time. Like I just bought that brand new car. Well, my boyfriend bought it, I really didn't want to buy it, but he got it for me and now I'm going to pay him back, But it's a sweet car, it's worth it, So now I'm thinking, okay, I have this new bill in my life, and how am I going to pay for it? Well, I want my eBay business to pay for it. So what if I want to make a certain profit, and I know what my profit per unit usually is, how much do I have to change my current selling practices to get to where I want to go? Okay? Selling price changes. If I change the type of items that I sell to a higher profit, lower cost, or higher cost unit. Volume changes. My goal, of course, is to pick up the pace and sell more items, right? Cost structure changes. My variable cost, my fixed cost changes. Well, right now, one of the biggest variable costs that just changed with my eBay business is the cost of postage just went up.
Again.
Well, yeah, it had been at the level it was for a long time.
It seems like it's always going up.
Yeah, but it had a big jump just on February 1st. I went from paying $5.90 for a padded flat weight to $6.30, I think, 40-cent jump. Okay, so how does, because I basically do a flat fee for my shipping, and so I had built in a certain level of profit in my shipping costs, and now that profit has dramatically reduced because my cost went up, okay? So my variable cost went up, so now I have to make an analysis. Do I eat that change, or do I increase my fixed cost, per unit my fixed, charge, okay? So in this example, if a company determines that an ad campaign costing $15,000 expected to increase sales by 25%, should they proceed? They can't do this analysis without that, or can't answer that without doing this type of analysis, a sensitivity. What kind of changes will affect your profit? Now, what does that deal with? The safety, the margin of safety. If budgeted revenues are above the break-even point, how far can they fall before the break-even point is hit? So basically, you have a projection. Say, I'm going to sell $100,000 worth of product. How much, say something happens in the economy or something happens to my product, how much can I lose in regards to into the amount of income coming in that is okay until I hit my break-even point? Okay? So say my break-even point is $50,000 and my revenues were $100,000, I have a margin of safety of $50,000. Okay, I can bring in $50,000 less than what I thought and still be okay. But once I bring in $50,000 and $50,001, then I am not okay. Okay? So my projections can be below 100,000 but above 50,000 because 50,000 is my break-even point. And that difference is your margin of safety. So, an indicator of risk, the margin of safety measures the distance between budgeted sales and break-even sales. So, My budgeted sales would be 100,000. My break even would be 50,000. So my margin of safety would be 50,000. 100 minus 50 gives me 50. We also can get the ratio removes the firm's size from the output and expresses itself in a form of percentages. So we have the measure or the margin of safety divided by budget sales. Gives me my ratio. So basically I can drop 50% and still be okay. My sales can be reduced by 50%, I'll still be okay. The minute it goes above 50%, then I got some issues. Okay? Questions on that? Cost structure. Managers make strategic decisions that affect the cost structure of a company. Is simply the relationship of fixed costs and variable costs to total cost. Okay? Are we heavy in variable costs and light in fixed costs? It's mainly, like my eBay business is basically variable costs, you know, not fixed costs. I don't have any fixed costs. Well, I take that back. I do have a fixed cost. My store, my eBay store costs me $59.99 or whatever it is per month. So even if I don't sell one thing on eBay, I still have to pay that $59, no matter what. And that's really all my fixed costs are. We can use a CVP analysis, based sensitivity analysis, to highlight the risk and returns as fixed costs are substituted for variable costs in the company's cost structure. The risk-return trade-off across alternative cost structures can be measured as operating leverage. So, do you guys think you would want to have a business that is more fixed cost or a business that's more variable cost? What do you think? Why?
Because you know what you're paying out each one.
But if you're more driven by fixed costs, yes, it's true that you know exactly what you're paying out. But wonder if I have a bad month or a bad year.
I guess you want both.
I mean, you always have both. But like my eBay business is variable costs. So if I just decide, you know, like during tax season, I don't do a lot of eBay because I just don't have time, you know? So it's only cost me $60. That's all it's costing me. No matter if I don't sell a thing, it's cost me $60 per month. That's it. Okay, and that's fine. Because I know in other months I'm going to make it up. My variable costs go down to nothing because I'm not going out to buy anything. You know? So, you know, it can help your seasonally too. You know, because I'm definitely seasonal. Okay, operating leverage describes the effect that fixed costs have on changes in operating income as changes occur in units sold and contribution margin. So the formula is operating leverage equal to your contribution margin divided by your operating income. What's the difference between the numerator and denominator? Fixed cost. Because what is contribution margin? That's your revenue minus your variable expenses. Your operating income is what? Your revenue minus your variable minus your fixed. Okay? The formula to estimate the change in operating will result in a percentage of sales, a percentage change in sales. If sales increase by 50%, operating leverage is 1.67. You should expect operating income to increase by 83.5%. So how did I come up with that 83.5%? My sales increased 50%, my operating leverage is 1.67, I multiply that, so that means my income or my operating income should be 83. I just multiply the percentage of sales increase times the operating leverage, and that gives me what my operating income should be, should increase by. Okay? Now, we've assumed that we're dealing with single products. More realistic involves multiple products sold and different variables, different amounts, different fixed costs, different margins. We use the same formula and used average contribution margins for the multiple products, and this technique assumes constant mix at different levels of total sales. So basically what that means is that when we are involving a mix instead of a single, we assume that the increase, so if it's a 2-to-1, increase, or we sell unit A 2 times more than unit 1, that's a constant increase. So if I sell 4 unit A's, I'm going to sell 2 units B's. If I sell 6, I'm going to sell 3. Okay? And we all know that doesn't happen usually. But we really, it's very, I think, very straight. There's not any, gray area. It's black and white. Okay, CVP isn't just for merchandising or manufacturing companies. Service and non-for-profit uses measuring their output, which is different from units sold. And we've been dealing with example, service agency might measure how many persons they assist, or airline might measure how many passengers miles they fly. So we've just been dealing in the earlier here, number of units sold, right? So like in the CPA firm, they could be number of tax returns. How many people did we serve? Restaurant could be the number of people you serve. How many hamburgers do you sell? How many chicken sandwiches do you sell? Okay? So, it doesn't just come down to, manufacturing. We can use this all over the place. Non-for-profit, how many people did I serve? How many people came into our door? I used to, for Ivy Tech, I worked for the Center for Working Families down in Indianapolis for Ivy Tech. And we had to keep track of the number of people that walked in our door. So, we didn't have a, per se, product for our students, but, that we gave them physically. We just gave them information. And we always had to keep track of how many people we gave information to. All right, so then we have the different types, so I think one of your homework might be dealing with. When I told you about above the line and below the line stuff, in a contribution margin, you notice that above the line, you have all your variable here. So if you had variable non-manufacturing costs, that would be up here. In this example, we just had variable manufacturing costs. But if you had non-manufacturing costs, would be what? Your office people, things like that, your sales stuff. If you had variable, it'd be up here. So then you have your contribution margin, and then all your fixed is below that. That's a contribution margin emphasis. If I'm doing on gross margin, everything above the line is your manufacturing costs, both your fixed and your variable. Okay? So above the line here, which is the gross margin line, I have fixed and variable manufacturing costs. Below the line, I have non-fixed variable manufacturing. Okay? So contribution margin, variable all on top, fixed all on bottom. Gross margin, your manufacturing costs, both fixed and variable. Your non-manufacturing costs, both fixed and variable below. You guys see the difference of those two. Okay? Any questions? How you guys feeling so far?
Good.
Good, bad, indifferent? Okay.
Much better.
All right, so let's take a look at a little bit at your homework assignments, see what you have to do this week. So you have 6 questions this week. I think the homework file, I'm going to have to take a look at it. Because I think there's a few issues. I think it was an old file that I've got to look at the different ones. All right, so in 17, you have to do, gives you, calculate the contribution and the operating income, and then you have to do it if variable costs expected to decrease. So you have to do it 2 different ways, and then you have to compare the 2 different ways, whether you would do it or not. In 18, don't look at this 10,000 in the book, it is 12,000, so you want to use the information in the book. Okay, I have to correct that, I haven't done that yet. So basically on this one, what you're doing is you're doing an analysis on break-even points for a airline tickets, but pay attention to what the book says, don't necessarily pay attention to $10,000 there, okay? I've got to get that fixed. Number 21. Again, you're doing a break-even analysis. So we're doing a lot of break-even stuff. How about that? 22. This one, you're going to do the break-even, and you're going to take into consideration taxes. Again, pay attention to the information in the book, not necessarily what's the numbers on this page. 26. I have Singapore, Thailand, and United States. That should be Italy, Spain, and Singapore. Basically, that I did this spreadsheet on the 14th edition, and they change editions, and I haven't updated the spreadsheet. Okay? So the first couple ones, you're just plugging in some of the numbers that they give you, and then you have to do the calculations. Okay? Similar to what you did on the first assignment. First four columns is just plugging in the information that they give you, and then using that information to determine the rest of it. Okay? And then 31, you're going to be doing a income statement and a contribution margin income statement. Okay? Which again, it's variable costs on top, fixed cost on bottom. You're going to be doing some of the break-even revenues and margin of safety here, there. So, any questions? It's pretty sad when I have glasses and I got to take them off to see the computer screen.
No, it's not.
It's called bifocals, and I haven't figured them out after a year.
I can't take off any reading glasses.
I miss my contacts. I ran out of my contacts and I just couldn't go and get some more, so.
Running out myself.
All right. So any questions about this? Okay, again, I will take a look at those emails and try to get back to you tonight. If not, it should be done by tomorrow afternoon. Try to do it at lunch if I can't get it done tonight. Everything from chapter 2 is due by midnight tomorrow. Did everybody get the discussion boards done? What are your thoughts on the discussion board? Did it go good? Bad? Indifferent? I really encourage you guys to look on there often and respond and really try to get a conversation going. Because let me tell you, this is going to help you when you do your report. You know, at the end of the quarter, the discussion boards are going to be designed to basically have the same type of questions that are on the report at the end of the semester.
Is the report like an essay or just answering questions that you have?
It's a answer question and essay form.
So
I mean,
like you'll have the questions and we'll just answer it, but not just answering it. Like
you have to go into details behind, you know.
you'll have stuff you have to answer.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm going to ask you questions. I'm sorry.
We gonna use the book.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Well, yeah, of course you are, because you're doing that. I mean, this is something you're doing outside of class. It's not something inside of class. No. It's in report form. I ask you lots of different questions about the book, and you have to do analysis of the question. I mean, you can't say, I like the book, okay? You got to tell me why you like the book or why you didn't like the book, you know?
Okay.
Kind of like, you know, on the first one, I asked you, you know, I said you had to, you know, at least write 100 words for your first post, right? So you always want to take a look at that and say, okay, I like this because, and do, you know, a couple bullet points on that. Or I did not like this because, like I said, you know, a lot of people say they didn't like the book at the very beginning. It was very hard to get into because she explained, you know, how they grew up and things like that, you know. So it's kind of slow getting into. So just know that it's the next probably 4 or 5 chapters in the book. So start reading that, and then next week the discussion will go up, okay? All right, any other questions?
My street came
So,
up like
did everybody read the introduction of the book? Because I usually don't read introductions to books. If I read, I very rarely read, but I read that, and I think reading that helped me to be interested as I started to read the book.
Okay,
Because it gave more of a background
okay.
in
Make
the
you wanna read
introduction.
Kind of gave you a
Because
taste
you
of
guys
what's
had already
coming.
forewarned me that the first 4 chapters were boring, so by the time I got my book Monday and I started reading it,
Mhm.
I decided I'm gonna go ahead and read the introduction, and I read it, and then I started to read the acknowledgments, and I thought, well, this is really boring, so then I just skipped on to the first chapter. But I don't think I would have been as interested if I hadn't have read those first 4 or 5 pages of the introduction.
Yeah, okay. All right, so again, if you have any question, when you get into the chapter 3 homework, you know, do it early this week and send it to me, and then I'll take a look at it and see, you know, if you're on track or if you're not. And then, you know, that way I'll give you some more time. Don't wait until next Monday to do it. All right? All right, you guys have a wonderful night and be careful.
You too.